Okay, your name?
Violet Starbuck.
This is Berenice Jackson interviewing Violet Starbuck of Shattuck, Oklahoma, December 13th, 1984. Miss Starbuck, where were you born and when?
At Gage, Oklahoma, April 12th in 1911.
And your father's name?
Ernest Ray Daniels.
Where did his parents come from? Do you remember?
Well, they came from Kansas here.
Mm-hmm. What made them leave the country up there to come down here to Oklahoma?
Well, they came here before they were married. They were married in 1902, I think it was. They got married.
Your
here.
father and
My
mother?
father and mother did.
Uh-huh.
But they both came from
Kansas.
From
They were
Kansas.
married up there.
No, they married here.
Oh.
After they come here.
Well, did he come with his parents then?
Yes.
Uh-huh. All right. Why did his parents leave Kansas to come down here?
Well, I don't know, really. Only I suppose they was hunting for something better.
Uh-huh.
They homesteaded here.
And what year did they come down here?
I think it was about 1900.
Uh-huh. How old was your father when he came?
Oh, he must have been about 20.
Uh-huh. Did they file? Or?
No, my grandfather did. He filed on a place northwest of Shattuck
Uh-huh.
and homesteaded it.
Mm-hmm. 160 acres. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you still have that land in your family?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, we sure don't.
Uh-huh. And your mother's name?
Pearl Edna Smith. Her name, maiden name is Smith.
Pearl Edna
Mm-hmm.
Smith. Can you tell me something about her and her parents?
Her mother, and they all came here about the same time. Her folks did, and they homesteaded also out northwest of Shattuck.
Mm-hmm.
And the old house still stands there. And me and my husband lived there 9 years in the same house.
Well.
And we raised our kids was little when we lived there, so we have a memory of Grandpa Smith's homestead.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother lived to be just like 2 months being 100 years old.
Yeah.
So she had a lot of history, but we didn't get it all.
Oh.
But we do have a record back to about the 9th or 10th generation of people
Well.
in this.
Uh-huh. Where did her parents live before they came here?
They lived in Kansas also.
Mm-hmm. Do you have you say you have a record, from what country did they migrate here from?
Well, Iowa. They came from Iowa to Kansas.
Well, I mean, did they come from England or Scotland? Or
That I don't know.
You don't know?
I just don't know. My grandmother Daniels was a Welshman.
Uh-huh. Well, evidently her parents or grandparents came from Wales then.
That's my imagine. I just don't know where they came from.
Mm-hmm. And your mother and father was married when?
I moved 1902
Uh-huh.
or 1901. I don't know. See, I never checked all this out before I come. I should have. But I didn't understand. You know, just what we were going to do.
Yes. Well, and then were they the ones that built this house that you folks lived in?
No, my grandfather.
Your
Smith.
grandfather built the house.
My grandfather Smith.
And, well, where did your parents live then?
Well,
when they were first married?
They lived northwest of Shattuck.
Also.
On Grandpa Daniels' homestead, on my daddy's homestead. My Grandpa Daniels didn't live very long. He died in the 30s.
Oh.
He died right after he was in the Civil War. So he died in 1907.
Mm-hmm. Can you remember any stories that he might have told
Well,
you?
see, I wasn't born till 1911, so
No, but I thought maybe you might have heard your father talk about something.
I never heard my father talk too much about his daddy.
Did he fight in the South or the North?
I think it was the South.
It was
I
in
couldn't
the
say
South.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was way before my time, you
Yeah,
know.
I know. All right, and then your parents farmed, I presume?
Yes, they farmed, and my dad, when I was born, my dad ran a liver stable in Gage. You know, a pig yard,
Oh.
liver stable.
Describe a liver. What is it?
It's a liver, where they put the horses up overnight and feed them and take care of them. And when you come to town, why, you put your horses in there for the day, and that's what he ran in
And
Gage.
he furnished feed for them.
And he fed them for so much, you know, there was feed.
Now, what would be the price of?
I have no idea what
You
the
don't know
price
what he
would have
charged.
been.
Uh-huh.
It probably was over $1 a day.
Uh-huh. It would be interesting to know, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Can you make a guess on how many head of horses he'd have on an average day?
No, I sure couldn't.
How many was he fixed for? Do you know?
I don't know that either, because it was, I imagine, you know, people didn't come down all at one time in them days.
That's right.
And probably he could put up, you know, 5 or 6 teams, you know, at a time.
Just about 15 or 16 horses at a time. But in the harvest time, when they'd be hauling their wheat and their broomcorn in, there would be quite a number.
Yeah, there would be then.
At that time.
But I have no idea how many.
Can you tell me where this was located in?
No, I sure couldn't. I was just a baby. I was born there.
I thought maybe you might have heard them.
Well,
Talk
you see, sometimes we don't listen to all this stuff.
Maybe you were like me. I was one of the younger ones, and time I got up big enough, why he was tired talking and he didn't know much of his everyday life. Okay, and where did you go to school?
I went my first year of school in Shattuck.
In Shattuck.
And then from there, we moved north of Gage. We lived 16 miles north and 4 miles east of Gage. And we went to a little bitty school, and it finally got down to where us kids were just there, and they wouldn't let us have school. So we went to Greenwood, north of Fargo, to school.
It was a bigger school. And
yes, it was a big school.
How far did you have to go to school?
Well, we had as far to go, we forgot what we learned before we got home. We had about 4 miles and a half.
You didn't have to walk it.
Well, we had to go in a wagon or a buggy or horseback.
And so you did walk some.
We did walk some.
Well, in the winter months, so when that being...
Well, we just didn't go to school a lot of times when it was too bad.
I see. You were going to tell me about a flood out west of...
Well, my folks lived west of Shattuck, about 9 miles, and we lived on a creek, Ivanhoe Creek. And one night it was in the spring of, I think it was 1917, and it come up a terrible rain. It had rained and rained and rained for several days. And one night, Mother got up, and we just lived in a little bitty adobe house. And Mother got up, and she thought the water was running under the door, so she opened the door, but the creek was up, and it all came in. And my daddy took us, there were 5 of us, and my daddy took us through a window and put us on an old chicken house. And he went back to get the rest of them, and he come back and he said, we can't stay here because the water's going to take this building, so we'll have to go further on. And we were between 2 creeks, like it was on both sides of us. So he knew the place where he could take us, the highest place there was. So we walked and walked and walked, and we got there. And it was raining. Rain just poured down. We had nothing on there, just what we had on, no shoes nor nothing.
Probably your night clothes.
Yes, he set us down in this spot, and he set stakes to see how high the water was coming up. And it got 4.5 feet on one side and 3 the other, he said, from us. And he went back to the house, and another man came swim across the creek and helped him get a tarp, wagon tarp, and to put over us. And we sat there from 1 o'clock in the morning in that rain, and we lost everything we had in the flood.
And the house, too?
No, the house stood, but the water stood in at 5 feet and 3 inches, Mother said.
Well, it took it a long time to dry out, didn't it?
Well, we never lived there anymore.
You said an adobe house. Do you mean
Well, it was
a side house?
cement
Cement.
kind of thing. and it washed everything out that we had.
And that was 1917. How many children were they?
We was 8 of us.
8 of
But
them.
there were just 5 of us there.
At that time. Name your brothers and sisters for me, beginning with the oldest.
Josephine, and Ray, and Ella, and Violet, myself, and Rosie, and Helen, and Cecil, and Kenneth.
Well, Are you all living?
No, there are just 4 of us living. 3 girls, and my oldest brother, and us 3 girls living.
Well, that was quite an experience. Something that you probably...
I never cared for water. After that, I went to school that fall, but I really remember what happened, and I could remember mother saying my little sister was 9 months old, and I remember Mama saying, "Oh, I think we've drowned her," and that was very frightening.
Yes.
For the rest of us, but we sat there till morning.
Did it make you sick?
Well, I don't remember getting sick. We didn't have time to get sick, I guess. We didn't have no clothes. So there has been a lot of things that happened to people way back then that we don't think about now.
That's right.
Because we had lots of floods then.
They didn't have the terraces,
No,
nor the dams like we do now.
no. And I never will forget the man, his name was George Stone, that carried me across that creek the next morning on his back. And he was a big, tall man, and the water was way up to his waist. And he carried me across that creek. I can remember as if it was yesterday.
Sure. How old were you?
I was 6.
You were 6. Well, I imagine the water's still running rather rapidly, wasn't it?
Yes, it was running.
It would take a strong man
Yes.
to fight that water.
My dad was an excellent swimmer, and this man was too. Or I don't think he'd ever got all of us across.
And then you, went to a neighbor's
We had
house?
the neighbors took us in, and this Mr. and Miss West Smith, and they didn't have no girls or no children, little children like we were. So she had hung up old shirts and put on us, and so finally, the neighbor women, like they always did, they got around and they sewed up sacks, and we finally got us some clothes.
Yes. And they fed you.
Yeah, we
People
was taken care of.
Were good neighbors in those days.
People really, I think, appreciated one another then more than they do now. They had time, they took time.
Why? What's the difference, you think?
Well, I think there wasn't television and there wasn't all this stuff that's going on in the world now to entertain people. We had to entertain ourselves.
And to have human companionship, we had to go to the neighbors and they come to our house.
That's right. And we had time to do these things.
Yes. And now, both members of the family usually has to work.
That's right.
And in those days, we got along on what Daddy made.
That's right. And there wasn't very much either.
But we managed. We survived, didn't we?
Well,
Mama?
we have seen it since we've been married too, that way. Sure have.
Okay, and now you married
Walter Starbuck.
Walter. In what year did you get married?
1927.
Oh, excuse me. Let's go back. You just told me about your schooling up to a certain part. Did you go on and finish high school?
No.
No.
I
Just went through the 8th grade.
Just the 8th
Was that at Gage?
No, my folks moved back over here then in 1924, and I finished in high school.
Oh, in the Ivanhoe School out here? Tell me about the Ivanhoe School. I've heard so much about it.
Well, it isn't there anymore. It's burned down, you know.
Oh, I didn't know it.
Yes. It burned down about 7 years ago.
Did you have all 8 grades?
Yes, we had all 8th grades. And then, you know, and when you finished your 8th grade, you had to go down to Barnett and take your tests and everything. So.
And did you go?
Yes.
Yes, I remember those tests.
And that's where I finished.
Well, if you passed the 8th grade examination, you could take a test then to teach school. And you
Yes.
could teach school. Did you do that?
No, because I got married, see.
Uh-huh. Well, you know there was two Ivanhoes up north.
Yes, that was an Ivanhoe town up there, wasn't it?
Yes.
Started and moved
Yes.
to Paulette.
Uh-huh.
I have a book on that.
The North Ivanhoe and South Ivanhoe
Mm-hmm.
for years up there.
Yeah, well, this was just a country schoolhouse. Ivanhoe School was just a country school.
Well, after the towns was abandoned, why those two schools continued, for years.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I taught in North Ivanhoe.
My children even went to Ivanhoe.
Oh, they did?
Uh-huh. Donnie went there his first year of school.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Pauline went there 4th grade.
Were you living there when your children was born?
I was living on Grandpa Smith's homestead.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And name your children now.
That's Pauline, Herbert now, she married Herbert, and Donald, Ray, and Harold, Dean Starbuck.
Mm-hmm. You just have the 3.
I lost a baby. We had 4. I lost a baby in 31.
Well. And Pauline went to school then at Ivanhoe.
Pauline went up to her 4th year.
Do you remember any of the teachers that taught there?
Yes, Gladys Steinball was the first teacher that she had, and Ethel Hurst taught there, and Idaho Mulkey from Marnette taught there.
Oh.
Idaho Mulkey taught me my last year, and there was Alvin Funk taught there, and Max. No, Max. I don't think Max taught there. Earl Karn taught there. The whole time we were living in there.
What year did that school, when they quit having school there?
Well, I really don't know. Just when they did quit there. It must have been in the 40s. Must have been right like the last of the 40s or early 50s.
Did they have literaries?
Oh, yes. We had literary and programs, and after the school quit, the community took the building for a community building, and the clubs kept it up, and we had fun nights and once a week, and we had lots of fun there.
And you'd take your suppers in with you?
We'd take suppers, and sometimes we'd have a box supper to fix the building up, and sometimes we'd have a pie supper, and we just had programs of all kinds.
I remember my granddaughter said, "Well, Grandma, what is a literary? Explain it so we can have it on permanent tape, what a literary is."
Well, when we went to literary, we all took a part of singing or programs and whatever our talent was, why we put that on. And then they would have a debate on certain things, and they choose sides. And they would debate of who was going to win, Maybe it would be on something that didn't amount to too much, and maybe it would be on something important.
Yeah.
Like, what is the most famous, and things like that, Hall of Fame or whatever. And we've had lots of good, and then sometimes be a spelling match.
Spelling match.
A spelling
and
match.
everybody took part.
Everybody took part.
What would you do? Choose up sides?
We choose sides.
And then the teacher would, or somebody would pronounce
pronounce it. So we just done whatever we could think of doing, and sometimes we'd have a carnival.
Oh? Well, how would you manage a carnival?
Oh, we took our little booths and just made up things that, like we were going to give a dime ring. Oh, it was a dime ring. It sounded like a diamond, but it would be a dime ring and things like that. So we had lots of fun.
Yes.
We really did. We really missed it, and because we didn't have too much entertainment.
That's right.
We had no radios. We didn't have our first radio until about 38.
Well, a home talent, we think of it, they were just farmers and maybe all they knew was to farm. But you know, there was a lot of good talent in those homes on the farm.
Yes, there was.
Did you put on plays?
We put on plays, and
Would you put on one of those big plays, 3-act plays?
oh, not too much like that, because there wouldn't be enough of us, you know, that we'd have to put on something.
Just one act play.
Just something simple. But that stayed on a long time. That was all way up in the 40s and 50s that we still had this. And the fact about the matter, we still was having sun there when it burned down.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just a one-room school.
Yes.
Can you imagine, or can you tell me about how big it was?
No, I'm not very good at measuring things, but it was pretty good size. I wouldn't.
20 by 30 or
Oh,
20
it
by
was-
40?
It was bigger than that.
It's bigger than that.
It was bigger than that.
And did you have a stage built up in the
Yes,
school?
we had a stage and a little clothes closet back of it where we could dress, or then we put up curtains. And I remember one time me and my sister and we was putting on a play, and my little Harold was just little, and we were getting it all fixed up and ready to come out, you know, and he'd come up and I told him to be quiet, and he went out and opened up the curtain, and he said, "I know what my mama's going to be. She's going to be an old Dutch woman."
Oh, he announced his mother. That was cute. And I suppose you'd have parties, card parties. Would you have card parties there?
No, we didn't have card
No
parties.
card parties.
No.
Did you have the Extension Homemakers Club at that time?
I just don't really know. I think there was. I didn't
But
belong
you
to
didn't
it,
belong to
but
it.
Pauline did, and they was keeping it up.
And I suppose they would meet there, maybe.
They did, They met for their club.
Okay, and how far then, when your children, they quit school there at Ivanhoe, did they come to Shattuck then?
Yes, we moved to town in 1938.
But you continued to farm, did you?
No,
Oh, what did your husband do?
we done anything that we could find to do.
You worked too?
I worked too whenever I could. I went to work when he was working on WPA when we moved to town. And the days he couldn't work, it would be bad. I went up to Montgomery's. They had a feed house, the elevator, and they raised broiler chickens, and I dressed chickens for a nickel apiece.
That was work. How many would you dress in a day?
Oh, I got up where I was making $2 or $3 a day.
That was good money.
That was good money.
Yeah.
And if you made 25 cents an hour, you was making real good. So we had to do whatever we could do.
Yeah.
And then in 1944, we bought into the Champlin filling station there, Conoco, and started our own business.
Did you have any relatives in World War I?
Just cousins in World War I. My daddy didn't go, nor my uncle or somebody, but
What about World War II?
well, yes, we had a lot in World War II. My husband lost a brother
Yeah.
on Leyte Island in 45.
Your husband didn't have to go.
No, he liked his deferment was up in August, and 1st August, and he was 38 to 29th July.
Well, so he was too old to go there by that time.
He didn't have to go.
What kind of work did he do in this WPA?
Well, they built those to start with. He went to supply and worked on that dam project and made those barracks and things that was over there, you know, and things like that. And then he finally got a job on the state, and he went as a carpenter building bridges on the state.
Oh,
So we just finally worked.
you worked up till you got really good job.
We worked up.
What did your husband think of the Work Progress Administration? Did he think it was a good thing?
Well, if it hadn't, it had to be good, or people couldn't have lived.
You know, do you think that kept us from going into a riot in that time?
Yes, I do.
That was that was during the Depression. when the banks all went broke. That was in 1929, wasn't it?
Yeah, that long in the 29.
And 30 and 31, 32. And the CC boys, the boys got to go to the CC camp.
Yes, I had two brothers that went to CC camps when they were just 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm. And that gave them a place to live and a little money.
A little money, which nobody else had.
Mm-hmm. What camp were they in?
They were, well, they entered Boiling Springs over here. They started their camp there.
Uh-huh. Well, they did a lot of good work over there.
Yes, they did.
And your two brothers helped on that.
Cecil and Kenneth were there.
And that is still standing there.
Oh, yes.
That little deal that they made there by the springs.
Oh, yeah, that's where my son lives, where Harold is. He lives out of Boiling Springs.
Oh, he
lives
does?
in the addition there.
What does he do?
He's a minister, and he's building a church there now.
Oh.
Heritage Christian Church.
Mm-hmm.
It's out towards Walmart's, and that's what he's doing now.
Oh. Now, where is this building going up?
It's going out, where the Homestead Bank is? Going out towards Walmart's. Turn there, and go out towards Walmart's at the theater. It's on that road, and it's right straight south of the Homestead Bank.
Homestead Bank.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know my town. I don't know where the Homestead Bank is.
Well, it's out towards Walmart's. It's on the road to Walmart's.
I
going
see.
east
On
there.
9th Street.
Uh-huh. It's not hard to find when you get out on
Yes, I'll look for it next time.
But my husband and I started farming in 1929, when really things was
bad time to start, wasn't it?
Was really gonna be bad because you couldn't even hardly borrow money without giving everything you had for collateral, because they wouldn't let you have $100 without mortgage and everything.
That's right.
And so we went in 29 and 30 and 31, and then the Dust Bowl, hit, and we really had a hard time.
Where was your farm?
We still lived out northwest of Shattuck.
Mm-hmm. Well, you couldn't raise anything, could you?
No. Well, we raised lots of broom corn in 29 and 30.
Oh.
And then the Dust Bowl started, and then we had nothing.
Mm-hmm. Is that when you moved to town?
Yes, we moved to town 38. Because we still had a little crop that year, but it didn't amount to too much. But we did raise lots of broom corn.
Well, that was a cash crop.
And, but you could hire help. We paid our help $1 a day. And our board to keep them, to pull this broom corn.
To pull the broom corn. Did you ever have to pull broom corn?
No. Very little that I pulled because I had babies to take care of. And I had to cook for all these men.
Yes. And that was a job to pull the broom corn and seed it.
Yes, my husband and his dad, and they had a broom corn seeder, and then after the broom corn was hauled in, then Rick, they started out to seed, and they seeded for everybody in the country. And well, sometimes we would get quite a bit for it, and sometimes it wouldn't be worth too much. But it has been worth, around $300 a ton.
Yes.
And then sometimes it wouldn't be that much. That's as high as I ever remember it being.
I wonder how many tons to the acre
I don't know.
that people could raise.
We always said, well, we got 69 bales, or we got 100 bales, or whatever, whatever we had.
Yeah. And then, where were you during the Black Sunday?
We lived on the farm then, and we were at home, and we were getting ready to go to Grandma's, Starbucks, and my husband said, well, it's getting dark. I think it's going to rain. I think we better wait a little while. And so I said, okay, and I got up and I took the children, but instead of going in the front part of the house, I went around behind, and I looked up over the hill, and there it was, just rolling over the hill. And I just went right direct to the cellar because it was so black. And I believe those children would have choked if we had been in the house. It was so dirty.
Weren't you afraid to go to the cellar too?
Well, that's the only thing I could think of, is getting the children out of it. And so you got to think of something, you know.
Well, the cellar, the dust wouldn't get down in there.
No.
Nearly so bad.
Oh, no. There's been many a days that it'd be so bad upstairs, I'd take the kids and go to the cellar.
Oh.
And we had a gas lantern, and I'd light that lantern, and I'd take them to the cellar when it'd be so bad. Because there was no house that kept it out.
No. Did you ever wake up of a morning and where your head laid on the pillow would be white, the rest of it would be colored?
We sure have. And at evenings, we take our bedding out and shake it after it kind of settled down, you know, so we could breathe that night. And the next morning, it'd be the same thing the next day.
It seemed like at sundown, the wind would go down.
It would go down, but still be dirty, but it would kind of settle.
Yeah. The air would be so full of dust, it would settle.
It would settle down. And you had a terrible time doing your washing because you didn't have no washer nor dryer.
No.
And I had an upstairs, and we didn't use it, and I'd put my lines up there, and I'd hang my clothes up in this upstairs. And but they didn't look very good, I can tell you.
Well, usually it let up. We'd have 2 or 3 bad days, and then usually we'd have a pretty day.
Well.
And that's when up there, around Slap House, then that's.
And a vacuum cleaner and all this stuff, why, we probably could have survived pretty well.
Yes. But at that time there was no use cleaning house because you knew it was going to come back next day.
It was coming back the next day, and we cooked many a meal that we left our lids on the kettles and just reached in and took out and eat what we could eat without.
Yeah, we did the same.
So it was really something. I hope we never have those days again. I hope our children never see those days.
Oh, I do too. But since that Black Sunday had to happen, I feel kind of glad that I experienced it. But I sure don't want to experience it again.
Oh, no, I don't either.
I'd rather just tell my grandchildren about it.
Well, it's kind of hard for the grandchildren or even my children to believe what we went through in the 30s. It all seemed like we always had lots to eat because we raised it. We had our cows and our pigs and our chickens and everything, and we raised it, but we didn't have no money.
That's right.
And we would bring maybe a 5-gallon can of cream to town, and we'd get $1.50 for a 5-gallon can of cream. And I checked in the store just yesterday while I was there, and a pint of cream was $1.88.
Well.
And that's a lot of difference.
Amen.
And we sold our eggs in 1931. Our second baby was born, and we went to Follett and got my grandmother Smith to come down and take care of the baby. She was old; she couldn't do anything, but we had nobody to take care of the baby. And she come down, and Walter brought the eggs to town, and he got 6 cents a dozen for them. And he said, come home, and he said, before I sell my eggs for 6 cents a dozen, I think I'll just feed them to the hogs. He said, that's too cheap. And grandmother said, I have walked 1.5 miles and carried my eggs to town to buy postage stamps and things for 5 cents a dozen.
Where was this somewhere?
Well, it was in Illinois or wherever they lived, in Illinois. And she said, and I burnt corn stalks to heat my irons to iron our clothes. But Walter said, well, I just think I'll feed my eggs, so I won't take 5 cents a dozen. But the next week he came to town, they were 5 cents a dozen.
Did he let them go?
Well, he brought part of them back home because they kenneled them out and wouldn't take them. And we was getting around 24 dozen eggs a week.
Oh, my.
And we couldn't get rid of them because it was 5 cents a dozen. And they wouldn't take them because maybe they have a spot in them. They kenneled them. So we would, that's regardless of how cheap things were, we didn't have the money to buy it.
Yes.
Coffee was 25 cents a pound.
Mm-hmm. And
But
what was sugar, do you remember?
I don't know what sugar was at that time. I don't remember, but I remember the coffee being 25 cents and bread a nickel a loaf.
Mm-hmm.
And gasoline 18 cents a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
But we couldn't buy them 2 gallons to go home and save it till we come back.
Yes.
But wages were just $1 a day if you could work, but my husband worked with a well drill for 50 cents a day.
Mm-hmm. And glad to get to work.
And glad to get to work, and we taken boys that didn't have no home in to stay with us.
Oh.
And that was, and
That was
they worked for their board or whatever they could get.
Uh-huh. Well, that gave the boys a place to stay and have a kind of a family life.
We practically raised one boy from he come to us when he was 14 and asked if he could stay with us, and we took him in.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have nothing.
Where is this boy today?
He lives well, last I heard from him, he lived in Clovis, New Mexico.
Oh. Well, I bet now he appreciates you folks.
Well, I think
And I
so.
imagine he did then, too.
I imagine he did, but we didn't have anything, but our door was always open to him.
Yes. Well, it was with everybody that way, more or less.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's the matter with our world today. There's too much violence because people pushes themselves in
Mm-hmm.
because they're locked out.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because I think we've locked ourselves out even
Mm-hmm.
in ways.
Mm-hmm.
But we did, and the Joneses we didn't have any more than the Joneses, and the
That's
Joneses
right.
didn't have any more than we did.
That's right. Everybody was found on the same level, weren't they?
Everybody was on the same level, and we could come to town. On Saturday was a big day. Everybody come to town. People stayed and visited till 12 o'clock at night. All the stores stayed open. You could go in and get you a drink at most any store.
Mm-hmm.
You could sit down and rest because they had benches on the streets or inside.
Mm-hmm. That was the social time for the people, wasn't it?
That was a social time for the people. Now we run to the store, we run home, and we don't even see nobody.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And that Saturday night is over, and I don't expect
well, when 6 o'clock comes, everybody goes home.
Yes.
We can't even buy a pill. We can't buy hardly anything now after 6 o'clock on Saturday night.
And now if you're going to your neighbors, you call them and see if it's convenient.
Ask if you can come.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the way, Donnie always said, Mama always sets the extra plate because so she won't have to get up and put another one on before we get through eating. Because we always have, when my kids were growing up, we had plenty
Mm-hmm.
of people.
Yes.
And I never knew whether it was going to be 30 or 40 or what on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
But we always managed.
Yes. That's the way it was in our neighborhood.
We'd all maybe go to one place
Mm-hmm.
and make ice cream
Mm-hmm.
but others seem like it's out now. I don't know why.
Well, there are good points that I'd like to go back to in the good old days, and then there's good points, or bad points I wouldn't want.
Yes, they call it the good old days, can't they? But I really do think that we was the happiest in our lives, really,
Mm-hmm.
in those days, because we had our children little, and we didn't have to worry about our taxes or income tax or
No, that's right.
and all this stuff. And if we did have any tax to pay, it was very little.
Mm-hmm.
No, in 1945, we had 2 lots that we paid 6 cents tax on.
Well, 6 cents. That's the cheapest you ever paid on it.
Yes,
And now it's a whole lot.
yes, our whole taxes maybe would be $24, and now it's $122.
Mm-hmm.
But we had lots of good times, and me and my husband, we were married 53 years before he passed away. So
Oh, that's right. Your husband is. He passed away, hasn't
yes,
he?
passed away in 1980. anyway, maybe.
I remember Bryce and I were going to come down for his services, and Hortense told me that she says, I just worried and worried and worried for sure you folks would try to come on
Oh,
this
it
road.
was so bad.
It was icy. And we talked about it, but we neither one are very good drivers on ice. So we decided that
It was real bad. We couldn't hardly get out of church. It was so bad. It was just ice.
and Hortense said, oh, I'm so glad you folks didn't try to come down.
Oh, that's what I said. A lot of people would have come if they couldn't. And I see I lost my two brothers and two grandsons and my husband less than and then a daughter-in-law in June this year.
Oh, is
Less
that
than
right?
5 years.
Ray's wife?
No.
Or Don?
My son lost his wife in June.
Oh, Harold.
Harold.
Well, I didn't know that. If Hortense told me, I'd forgotten. But I never did meet Harold nor his wife.
Oh, he had 3 children.
But your son, Donnie, is a wonderful neighbor.
Well, thank you.
We just love that family. Those 2 little girls, I think they're precious.
Yeah,
They're outgrowing me, though.
oh boy, they're outgrowing me. Outgrowing the grandmother.
Yeah.
They really are.
Well, now you bought into this oil company. You were telling me this station,
Well, a filling station.
filling station.
Yeah, in 1944. We bought in there. And we was in business 32 years. About 33, really. And we finally built us a place of our own and moved out of the big places into a little individual place down here on the corner, and that's where Donnie started his welding and things.
Oh.
And we sold out in 75. And we had our golden wedding anniversary in 77. And from there, I did cake work and decorating and did weddings.
Oh, you did? You catered the weddings and decorate cakes?
And I was a cake decorator.
Oh, well, how nice. Well, now they gave you something to do, didn't it?
Yes, but I haven't did any of it since my husband passed away.
Oh, you haven't?
I gave some lessons. I have a girl who's doing wonderful work.
Well,
And, but I had open heart surgery a year ago tomorrow.
oh, is that right?
So I haven't did anything.
How many bypasses?
3.
3. Where did you have it done?
Oklahoma City.
And who was your doctor?
Dr. Holly.
Dr. Zudi was mine.
That was a year ago, 14.
And how are you getting along?
I'm getting along just fine. I wasn't on any medication till this year, the last month. I had a little flare-up, and I was in the hospital a couple of days, and they put me on medication, but I wasn't on any. And, some days I feel good, and some days I don't.
You look well.
That's what everybody said, and I said, boy, I ought to just really be a good-looking corpse.
Well, that's what they all tell me, how well I look.
That's what they always tell me, I look so good.
Do you have to walk every day?
Well, see, I lost my feeling in my foot when I had my surgery, where they took the veins out of my leg. They pulled a nerve, and I wasn't able to walk.
Oh?
I still don't walk very good.
Oh, is that right? Do you ride a bicycle then?
No. He told me to just stay active, and do my work.
And that would be enough exercise.
I've got by so far.
Well, I do walking in the house a lot.
Well, I do too. I do a lot of walking in the house, and I got a big kitchen, and I walk. I seem like I spend most of my time there.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Is there anything now that we...
Well, I just wasn't very well prepared because I didn't know.
You didn't know what we were going to ask?
No, I sure didn't. But,
did you farm with horses out there?
yes,
And your machinery then was horse
horse-drawn.
Did you ever go in for the big machinery and tractors?
Well, an old Fordson tractor is about all.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have no big equipment because we didn't raise anything but broom corn.
Mm-hmm.
Little feeds, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And besides, we didn't have the money to buy big equipment.
Yeah.
You know, if you bought a lister, well, that was just about all you could afford.
But you did make good in this station, didn't you?
Yes, we made it. We was in there during the war.
Uh-huh. You didn't have anybody in World War II then, either?
Yes.
Oh, yes, your two brothers.
My two brothers and Walter's brother was killed in
Uh-huh.
service. And then, of course, a lot of cousins and things like that. But my husband's brother, youngest brother, was killed in service.
Where were you when the news came that the war was over?
We were in the Conoco station.
And
But
everybody?
we couldn't be very happy about it because we'd lost.
Yes, you'd lost your brother-in-law.
We was happy that them that was there could come home, but
Mhm.
some people just went all out and just threw big parties, and we didn't feel like that.
Well, no doubt you were happy that it was over.
Yes, we were.
But you couldn't celebrate with them.
No,
Mm-hmm.
no, because we felt like that there were so many people was in the shape that we were in
Mhm.
of grief that it wasn't right
To throw a big celebration.
to throw a big celebration.
Did you bring Walter's body home?
Dale, his name was Dale. Yes, we brought home about, it was, it must have been about 4 or 5 years after.
Afterwards.
He's buried out here, his body's out here in the cemetery. But it's hard to believe.
Yeah. What was the biggest blizzard that you can remember?
Well, we had a big one here, and the one big one that I can remember, we had the year we moved to town in 37 and 38 in the spring. We had a big one.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 71, you know, we had 31 inches of snow here.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
On the level?
That was about as big a one that I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
Was in 71.
Mm-hmm. Did you lose anything? Did it?
No, it was warm.
It
It was
warm.
in February, and the weather stayed nice.
Well.
But
Well,
they were
that-
big snow. You just couldn't go no place. You couldn't even get up Main Street.
Is that right?
You couldn't go no place unless you walked. And people would come in on horsebacks,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to the stores and things. But there was 30 inches.
Mm-hmm. Well, I imagine there was a lot of livestock lost.
Well, I don't think there was, because if helicopters come in and brought feed in and dropped it, and then, as I say, it didn't get so extremely cold
Mm-hmm.
like you would think it would.
Mm-hmm.
But it was bad.
Well.
I think that's about the biggest that I can remember, them two that I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And neither one of them was in April, and the other one was in February. There was neither one of them too cold,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't out. But as far as I know, I've had a good life.
Well, we look back and we've had our hard times, but we've had good times.
Well, I think we go down a different road and we can make it however we want it.
Yes, that's up to us.
It's up to us. I think we can make it miserable for ourselves and everybody else, or we can go on.
Can you think of anything else?
Well, not right now. I sure can't.
When you go home, you probably
Oh,
can.
I think.
Okay, well, I sure thank you, Violet,
All
for
right,
coming
well,
in.